The rise of the outsiders. What if he told you Hollywood was built by people the world tried to push aside? No more money, no more status, no more safety net. Yet they changed global culture forever. Have you ever watched a Hollywood movie and you wondered, who actually built all of this? Not the actors, not the directors, but the powerful, brilliant, sometimes ruthless men who turned a dusty California town into the world's most magical storytelling machine. Today, we dive into the unbelievable rise of the Hollywood Moguls, a group of immigrants, dreamers, and risk-takers who changed global culture forever. Their story is full of ambition, conflict, breakthroughs, and the birth of an entire industry. So sit back because this is the real origin story of Hollywood. The immigrant dreamers who started it all. To understand Hollywood, we need to start with the people who built it from zero. Film studios weren't created by wealthy Americans with big education or government support. Surprisingly, the founders of Hollywood were mostly poor immigrants, many of them Jewish, who came to the United States with almost nothing. Names like Adolph Zukor, Louis B. Mayer, Samuel Goldwyn, Carl Laemmle, and the Warner Brothers. These men weren't born into power, they were born into struggle. Zukor arrived in America with just a few coins in his pocket. Mayer worked in scrapyards and slowly saved money. The Warner Brothers spent years traveling with a cheap projector, showing short films in tiny towns. What made them special wasn't luck, it was vision. At a time when most people thought movies were just short, funny clips for children, these men saw something bigger. Movies could be a new art form, a new business, a new dream. They believed stories shown on a screen could unite people, inspire whole nations, and earn a lot of money. And so, in the early 1900s, while New York's film scene was crowded and controlled by patents, these dreamers moved west to Los Angeles. Why? Because it had sunlight, cheap land, and the freedom from the old film monopolies. Sir, on empty fields and the orange farms, they began building something the world had never seen. Hollywood. Studio grew one by one: Paramount, MGM, Universal, Warner Bros., Fox. Each began as a small company with almost no more resources, but with massive ambition. These moguls didn't follow rules, they made the rules. Creating the Hollywood system. Once the Moguls arrived in California, they built not just movies, but an entire industrial system. First, they created the studio system, a way of controlling every part of filmmaking. The studio owned the actors, the directors, the writers, the filming stages, even the theaters where movies were shown. This allowed them to produce films fast, at low cost, and release them across the country. It was a machine, and the Moguls were the engineers. Louis B. Mayer at MGM became famous for creating the idea of the movie star. He discovered young talent, trained them, changed their names, changed their looks, and turned them into icons. From Judy Garland to Clark Gable, stars were not born, they were manufactured. Meanwhile, the Warner Brothers focused on strong stories and social issues. They made films about gangsters, workers' rights, and real-world problems. They were tough, direct, and unafraid to challenge the government or big business. Carl Laemmle at Universal reinvented horror movies with classics like Dracula and Frankenstein, films that shaped global pop culture. And Adolph Zukor at Paramount believed in luxury filmmaking, elegant costumes, beautiful sets, A&D stories that made the audience dream of a bigger life. Together, these moguls created a full ecosystem of storytelling. But it wasn't all glamorous. They controlled actors with strict contracts. They sometimes hid scandals to protect the studio's reputation. They made risky decisions that could destroy careers. Yet, the system they built allowed Hollywood to produce hundreds of films a year, more than any other place in the world at the time. Hollywood became not just a location, but a factory of dreams. Global influence and the legacy they left behind by the 1930s and 40s. The Moguls had turned Hollywood into the cultural capital of the world. Millions of people across Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America watched Hollywood movies and learned about American fashion, music, humor, and values. The influence was so strong that leaders of other countries sometimes complained. Hollywood wasn't just entertainment, it was soft power. But there was also something human behind all of this power. The Moguls themselves were deeply imperfect men. Louis B. Mayer was known to cry during tough business deals, then immediately turn around and make a brutal decision. Samuel Goldwyn was famous for his Godwinisms, funny quotes like, "A verbal contract isn't worth the paper it's written on." The Warner brothers constantly argued with each other, often turning family conflicts into public drama. Despite their flaws, their collective achievements were enormous. They introduced the world to blockbuster storytelling, the concept of celebrity, the red carpet, the Oscars, sound film, color film, global movie distribution, and the idea that anyone, from anywhere, could become a star. When the studio system later collapsed in the 1950s due to government regulations and the changing culture, the Moguls' original studio survived though transformed. And today, the entertainment world they built still dominates global culture. From Netflix to Disney Plus to modern cinema, everything can be traced back to the foundations these early Moguls created. Their rise is a reminder that innovation often comes from outsiders, people without power, without status, but with unstoppable vision. These men didn't just build Hollywood, they built a new form of myth-making, one that continues to shape how the world dreams. So, the next time you sit down to watch a movie, whether it's a Marvel film, a Pixar animation, or a Netflix original, remember that it all began with a small group of dreamers who refused to accept limits. They arrived in America with nothing, but they had imagination, courage, and the belief that stories can change the world. And in many ways, they succeeded. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the origins of Hollywood, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about which Hollywood figure or era you want to explore next. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep dreaming big.